Hello everybody and welcome to Office Hours. Let's see, I'll make sure I'm unmuted here. Here we go, now I'm unmuted. So welcome everybody to Office Hours. So glad you guys could be here. You can see I'm in my new setup here, so still shaking out everything here with this new setup, and now I have a nice grand here. Hopefully you guys should be able to hear that. Also, all the videos should now be in HD, so you should see everything nice and clear. So any issues, please go ahead and let me know. That helps me to make it better for all of you. All right, so I want to say hello to everybody who's joining me on Zoom, everyone who's joining me on YouTube, on Facebook. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and chat in if you're on Facebook or on YouTube. If you're on Zoom, you could chat in, you could raise your hand, you can also unmute yourself. Looked like I had a question from Mark was raising his hand. So Mark, if you want to unmute yourself or if you want to chat in your question, you can go ahead and ask. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Super. My question is this. When I was going through Piano Essentials and I was doing the 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression with the rootless chords. So for each of the 12 keys. Then I was playing this other blues thing from the Summer Piano Jam, and it's like the intermediate lesson. I think it's the same progression in the beginner. It also goes through a 6, 2, 5, 1 progression toward, as the form comes to its end.
Yep.
So my question is this: with the Piano Essentials, when you play the 6 and the 2, you're playing minor chords because of the key you're headed to. Doesn't include those notes that would make it major chords.
Okay.
But in the blues thing, when you're playing those chords and you're heading towards the 1 chord, you're not using those minors. They're majors, and you're using the notes that are outside of the key signature. And I'm just trying to justify that in my mind, those two realities where in one case you've got to conform to the notes that live in that key you're heading towards.
Yep.
The tonal center key, or however label it. So that's my question.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute you right now, and I'll answer that question for you. All right. So great question by Mark, and I'm going to say the question again because if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you're just hearing me saying, yeah, and you can't hear his stuff because that's coming from Zoom. All right. So his question was basically when we're doing like a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression, maybe we're doing the E minor 7 to the A7, to the D minor, to the G7, to the C. However, when we go to something like a blues, you might find it's E7 to A7 to D7 to G7. All right. So how do we reconcile when the 3 chord should be dominant or minor, when the 6 chord should be dominant or minor? And you were saying major, Mark, which, yes, you're correct, the 3rd is major, but in reality, the chord is a dominant chord because it has that, dominant 7th in there. Anyway, that's just a little the technical theory thing. So when we are, so first of all, the 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression, when we're talking about diatonic chords, all right? And diatonic chords, again, there's a bunch of lessons on Jazz Edge for that. Just do a search for diatonic. But our diatonic chords, all right, our 7th chords all formed from using notes from our major scale. Okay, those are the chords that are found within the key. Typically, the 3 chord would be minor, the 6 chord would be minor, the 2 chord would be minor, the 5 chord would be dominant. All right, so when we have a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression, that is typically 3 minor, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5, 7, to 1. And I'm doing all of this in just block chord root position for right now to make it easier for you to see. So then in Piano Essentials, we do a 3, 5, 7 of 2, 2, 5 progression. A lot of times I say to students, a lot of times in the spur of the moment, we'll just say a 3, 6, 2, 5, even though that 6 chord is really a dominant chord and then a 2 chord, and then to the 5 chord. All right, so what's going on here is this is what we call a secondary dominant. Again, you can take a look at the Jazz Edge site, just do a search for secondary, and that should come up with secondary dominants. I have a bunch of tutorials on that, and I'll explain secondary dominants. But basically what we're doing is we are changing the 6 chord into a dominant chord, which gives us a stronger resolution to take us to the 2 minor chord. All right. In the blues, however, we go from a 3/7 to a 6/7 to a 2/7 to a 5/7 to a 1. Or in the blues, we might also replace the 2 chord with a D minor or a 2 minor. So a lot of times if we're playing a blues, I'll just run through this quickly. C7, F7, C7, F, C, A, D, G, E, A, D, G, or it could be E, A, D, G. I could play around with it. I could still do a 3, 6, 2, 5, in which is the 3 chord is minor, the 5 is dominant, the 2 is minor. The 3 is minor, the 6, right, is dominant, the 2 is minor, the 5 is dominant. I could still do that, or I could change them to dominants. All right, so, sorry, I'm trying to compress this as much as possible for you and give you a short answer, because it's really, obviously, with music theory, it's a larger question. So really, if we boil this down, what's happening is in the blues, we utilize a lot of dominant sound. All right, so that means that we could use this 3/7 to 5/7 to 2/7 to, 3/7 to 5/7 of 2, 2/7 to 5/7 to 1. And the reason it works in the blues is because that dominant sound creates that nice bluesy bite, because all of those chords in the blues are dominant chords. All right, but in reality, we can play around with what we end up using. Now, typically what we do is, this is in a turnaround section. Let me just pull one up here real quick here for you. All right, yeah, let's just do this. This is fine. And you know what? I should be able to do this right in here. Okay, so you should probably be able to see it. I'm going to do this rather, just to make sure that you guys can really see this much better. Okay, so, all right, so let's focus our attention on these 2 measures right there. So, first of all, this is our 1 chord, our 4 chord, 1, 4. This is a half-step resolution, taking me to a 5/7 of 2, 2, 5. Okay, now we have 1, 5/7 of 2, 2, 5. Okay, this F7 chord can actually get replaced with a A7 as well. Okay, so I could do A7 right there. Let me just get this, move this. Let's see if this will, okay, I'm not gonna be able to move it, but anyway, yeah, so this could be an A7, that F7 chord right there. I could play that as an A7 as well. So then from the end here, I'll just play from the G minor 7. And I can play around with this. Maybe I don't do G minor to C. Maybe I do G minor and I do G sharp. And I can even change this stuff around. I could do that as a G7 instead. Okay. So the point is that when we have these turnaround chords, we can play around with whether or not they're going to be minor, whether or not they're going to be dominant, right? And there's no one right way of doing it. Obviously, it's going to depend on the melody. It's going to depend on the sound. In the blues, this is the blues gives you a lot of great freedom to be able to play around with those sounds. So you could try A minor to D7, G minor to C, A7 to D7, G7 to C, A7 to D7, G minor 7 to C. You could do tritone substitutions in there, A7 to A flat 7 to G7, right? So F7, E7, E flat 7, D7, G minor, I played A7, A flat 7, G7, C. Or I could do A7, D7, G minor, C. Or A7, D7, G minor, G flat. So you see all these different permutations that I could play around with. So when you're playing diatonic and you're playing, like, let's say in the key of C, right, to keep it simple, and the melody note is a C and it says an A chord, a 6 chord, well, what do you think you're probably going to do? It's probably going to be a 6 minor, right? If the melody note is a C sharp, then that's probably an A7, probably a 5/7 of 2 versus a 6 minor chord. So anyway, I know that was a very, longer answer than probably what you were looking for, Mark, but it is a much bigger theory question, right? So you could play around with all those different permutations, and hopefully that gave you some more stuff to, to work off of. All right, so moving on here. Let's see here. Let me jump over. Thank you. Nice to be back as well. All right. Let me just take a look at the chat here. And I just need to hide something if I can. Yeah, well. All right. Anyway, maybe if I do this. There we go. All righty. Jim, you have a drop 2 question. Why don't you go ahead and unmute? Go ahead, Jim.
Yep. Okay, good. So we're starting to work with Ain't No Sunshine this fall.
Yep. Hold on one second. I'm going to do this as well. Maybe it might be able to pick up. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're starting to work with Ain't No Sunshine on Standards by the Dozen current year. So he's introducing drop 2 voicings, which theory-wise makes perfect sense. The challenge I'm having with it is actually it's a challenge just in terms of breaking out a muscle memory of chord voicings, because I've been working with your videos over the rootless chords and then, all the inversions on the major chords and 7th chords and all the different positions. And I'm finding that, I'm used to certain muscle memory, as I said, of how to grab them. And when I go to drop 2, it's counterintuitive because all of a sudden, you're dropping the second one and you're introducing your left hand playing a chord note. My question is, how do you advise starting to practice those so they become kind of more muscle memory, or what are your thoughts on how to kind of make them more natural in our playing? Because it's almost like a brain teaser where you're so used to grabbing chord notes and then all of a sudden one is gone and the other one's being replaced in the left hand.
Right.
So,
right.
I get the theory; it's crystal clear. It's just a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So, just in case you didn't catch it on YouTube or Facebook, the summary of the question is basically, working with drop 2 voicings or any different kind of chord voicing. How do you get out of, your normal hand positioning and wrap your mind around these different chord voicings and chord positioning in the hand? And it is a definite challenge because, it's not just drop 2 voicings. You could do that over that, diminished approach and stuff like that as well. My virtual keyboard here is still something going on with this I gotta fix. So hold on one second. Let me just do this. Hopefully this will. There we go. I have just a little side note. There's a light bar underneath the keys, and because this is a midified grand piano. And something is going a little funky that makes this virtual keyboard kind of get stuck now and again. So at least I have a quick solution for it. But if you see that happen, that's what's going on. All right, so anytime you're trying to master new chord voicings, right, and new shapes. So let's talk that, just new shapes, because it's really. It doesn't matter if it's drop 2, if it's diminished approach, if it's rootless chords. It could even just be learning triads or 7th chords. Anytime that it's something new, one of the challenges that we're always up against is that we have 12 keys. And not only do we have 12 keys, but then every chord has inversions. And then depending on how many notes in the chord, that could be 2 inversions or 3 inversions, right? So then it's like you start doing the math there, that's a lot of work to do. So one of the best ways I have found to master this kind of stuff is to take small sections. So I don't have Paul's Ain't No Sunshine lesson in front of me. I'm not sure exactly what he did for the drop 2, but what I would do is I would take that section and just try working that one section. So it's like one measure. And then what you got to say to yourself is, I'm not going to worry about trying to master this every single place, okay? Let me give you another for instance. The diminished approach. That whole thing, the diminished approach, you can go on each note of the scale using that major bebop scale. See the A flat in there, right? So that's a lot of chords that you got to master, right? So instead, what I would do is I would say, okay, hey, look, if the melody starts on the root or it starts on a third, I'm just going to try and get that down. And that's it. And I might try and do that in other places on the keyboard. All right, so there it is in C. Let me try and go ahead and let me do it in F. Okay, there is an F. Let me try and get it in B flat. There we go. So you see how now I'm not trying to do the entire thing. I'm taking a small section, and now I have a better chance of being able to get that into my playing faster than if I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this on all the scales, right? And then through all 12 keys, because by the time I get to the second or third key, I've already forgotten what I've done on that first key. So what I would suggest you do is just take a small snapshot. So if you're going to try and do drop 2 voicings, like, okay, maybe it's like you just try and get these drop 2 voicings on maybe a dominant chord. Okay, try and get that. And there it is on C, B flat, and A flat. And then what I might do is I might go to something like iReal Pro, make myself a little track for myself, and then a lot of times, I'll play around with the voicing, maybe play around with the different hands, okay? But I'm just trying to get a small section to start with. And then once I feel as though, all right, yeah, I got that down, now I could try doing it somewhere else, or I could try doing it in another key, or I could try expanding upon that. Again, with the diminished approach, if I could do it on the root going up to the third, well, maybe now I go to third up to the fifth, right? And I tried doing that in 4, 5, 6 different keys. Also, applying to songs is, I have found, the best way of being able to lock stuff in. Anytime you're doing like, okay, I'm going to do circle of fourths or circle of fifths. Circle of fourths and circle of fifths is a very abstract, it's an exercise. Whereas when you apply it to a song, it really, gives you skin in the game. Because when you're doing circle of 4 or 5 exercises, you know exactly what came before, you know exactly what comes next, all right? So when you know that, the body and the brain start to get used to that. So what you're going to do is you're going to change it up. In a song, it's always different. So you might do like a drop 2 section in this song, but now when you move to another song, oh, lo and behold, it's a little bit different. Again, you don't try and do it for the entire song, you do it for one little section. And if you think about that and you're playing and in you're practicing and you embrace that approach, what you will find is that you will get one little thing, one little thing, one little thing. Again, if we, just to, beat this analogy to death here for a second here, the word a day calendar, right? What do? You learn one word a day, right? It's not going to give you 20 words to learn in a day because everyone knows that's way too much. Even the one word a day, most of us can't do it, right? I mean, it's like, it's still too much. We fall off, and that's fine. So the idea, though, is at least if you could get one idea a day or one idea a week, then you have a much better chance of that locking into your memory, both physically and mentally. All right? So hopefully that helps you, Jim.
Thank you.
You got it. Michelle, wondering what is already available on the Total Musician. All right, great question, Michelle. Well, let me go over here. I'm going to load up my dashboard while this is loading up. Let me tell you, the Total Musician, like I've said for many students, it's not for every student. The Total Musician is really for those students that really want to be musicians, right? So if you're more of a hobbyist piano player or a hobbyist musician, then, you know, one of my other sites would be a better fit for you. But if you're looking to like, hey, look, I really want to work with singers, I want to work with other musicians, I want to really like dive in and understand more about music, then the Total Musician is really great for you. There's a lot of great lessons up there already. There are 2 teachers who have been adding lessons, and I will be adding in more teachers and sessions. I have a session that I'm going to be adding and in a couple of days. It's going to be coming up in May. I'm going to be working with a bass player here in the studio. That's going to be super exciting because I know this bass player. I've worked with him in the past, but I have not worked with him for several years now. And we're literally going to get together and it's going to be like, okay, we're doing this live without no rehearsal, nothing like that. And I want you all to see, how does that work? What is that interaction? How do we pick what it is that we're going to play? What if he doesn't know a song or I don't know a song? Like, we're going to talk about all of those different aspects, because many of you probably would like to work with a bass player or already work with a bass player, or you want to go to a jam session and you might be nervous about working with somebody for the first time. So that's going to be a really exciting session that we're going to be doing in May, and that will be listed on the events area of the dashboard. Just so you know, the events area of the dashboard is right, if you go right into My Jazz Edge, you see it right there in events, and I will be adding that in. All right, so anyway, in Total Musician, you see we have a bunch of lessons from Anna. She's a fellow Berkeley grad, and she's an actress and a musician and singer and pianist, and she has a lot of great vocal lessons. Mike Marble did our Drums with Willie program. You have access to all of the Drums with Willie stuff, and Mike is also doing some rhythm lessons. Both of them are going to be doing live classes as well. My Rootless Chords workshop that I just finished up yesterday is now in the Total Musician site as well. Okay, and just to let you all know, my Premier membership is going to be released in the next week or so. I'm going to be talking more about it, and that is a really super special membership, and I can't wait to get some new Premier members onto the site, because that's really the membership in which, you know, I know all of you were like, wait a second, what happened to Coaching with Willie? It's now Coaching with Paul, and Paul is a fantastic musician, and a lot of students love him, but some students are like, hey, I want access to Willie. Well, yeah, I only have so much time, obviously, but with the Premier membership, I'm going to be focusing my attention on my Premier members. I'm going to be doing coaching twice a month with my Premier members, and it's going to be a much smaller group and much more intimate with the grand piano, all of this good stuff. So anyway, I will be mentioning Premier more, so just be sure to check your email for that. But anyway, Michelle, here's your answer to your question. So you could see already, I mean, 40 lessons here, 12 here, 19 there, 6, 6, 6. And then this is 6 lessons, but there's a bunch of topics underneath it. This right here, Drums with Willie, this is several hours of content. You know, a bunch of other lessons here. So you can see there's already quite a bit of content on a Total Musician site now. If you are interested in signing up for the Total Musician, I was running a special, but you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not even sure if you can even get to that special now. So if you have the link from one of the emails that I sent out, the special on Total Musician ends Friday. After that, it's going to go to its retail price. If you need help with that, just send an email to support@jazzedge.com. Support@jazzedge.com, and I'll be happy to help you if you're interested in signing up for the Total Musician. Let's see. Mark, I have a question too much to explain in type. I assume that was you raised your hand, and that's what let me know, Mark.
You answered it.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. April, hey, Willie, I'm the gal in San Diego who joined the Jazz Combo after 2 years on Jazz Edge. Got a question about improv. Please, go ahead, April. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so are you familiar with Joy Spring by Clifford Brown?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I got the opportunity to join these jazz combos in February, and I was just starting to peel back the layers of how to improv, like the basics, okay, I'm in this mode, Locrian scale, just the basics. So when I joined the jazz combos, it kind of flipped me upside down and gave me a lot of really tough material all of a sudden. And Joy Spring is the one, it's the toughest one for me.
Yeah.
So it changes, it's like, 2-5-1, and then it modulates up a half step in a 2-5-1, and then back down, and then in a new key. So I was trying to approach it in the sense of, okay, I've got a G minor, now I've got a C7, now an F major 7. I was trying to approach it scalar when I was improvising. And then one week, one of our teachers, because we have a rotating round of teachers, this legendary upright bass player named Marshall Hawkins, he came over to the keyboard. He goes, here's how I would do it. This song is so fast. He goes, I just do chord hits. And that kind of broke me wide open too, because I'm like, okay, all of a sudden I'm not thinking scalar. He's like, things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
That instead of trying to improv individual notes over that fast of a chord change, he's just, doing this really cool rhythmic hits on the chords. And so do you have thoughts on like what I should do for Joy Spring?
Absolutely, sure. Been a while since I played this tune myself. Let's load this up on here. Okay, so...
You have it right there. That's the version I've got. That's the same one.
All right, so let's see. All right, so yeah, this moves pretty quick, right? It's usually that tempo or even faster. So when you're dealing with songs that move really quick, the very first thing, and you're improvising, okay? The very first thing that I want you to do is take a breath, okay? Because and that might seem silly, but here's the thing. When we're presented with fast tempo tunes, what is our first reaction? Right? To tighten up. Like maybe even hold our breath, right? We get like kind of nervous with that. And then immediately right there, I mean, we're adults. We know logically, if you tighten up, right, you are not going to be able to play and you're not going to be able to play fluidly. So the first thing you're going to start to do is really kind of just start to just relax into it. All right. So let's actually pull up iReal Pro here, and I'm sure I probably have it in here. Just give me a second to find it. And there we go. All right. So now if I just want to like play this. Right, so if I'm like playing through this, that's moving along pretty quickly, right? So I need to just kind of relax with it. You see how I'm just trying to just stay relaxed with it and just kind of get out whatever ideas that I can. All right, so that's the first step. Next step, rather than thinking scalar, you want to think less ingredients. So when I think improvisation, I think there's ingredients, right? There's like, when we look at that F major right here, there are ingredients that we can use. We can think about using our F major scale, Ionian, right? And then, so now what do you got there? You got 7, 8 notes, depending on how you want to look at it, but that's quite a bit. So the first thing is, let's use less ingredients. Your chord tones are always a good thing to do. So like, right? So like utilizing chord tones is going to be a lot easier for you to wrap your brain around that. All right, maybe chord tones with a 7th chord is still too much because that's a lot of notes. But let's stay there for 1 second. One thing I would do is, to practice, make sure you can go through and right? Make sure you can go through and play those chords, whether they're rootless chords or block chords. Make sure that you could do that and you can move in between inversions. If you can't do that, well, then it's going to be virtually impossible for you to be able to pull out those notes to be able to use for improvisation. But let's say, okay, so now I have that. I feel comfortable with that. Well, now, right? So now I can start to pull out those notes and kind of arpeggiate those chords to a certain degree and add some rhythm to it. So now I get a little bit more melodic stuff going on. I could also bring it back to just triads, right? So if I do this just in triads, I mean, I'm like starting to dig that and get into that just playing triads. And I'm purposely doing this because I want you to see that it's just a relaxed thing. I'm just trying to get relaxed with that. Now, obviously, playing, I'm going to be, in it, right? So the triad is a lot easier because now you're only thinking 3 notes. You should be able to go through and triadically be able to like, be able to go through it. And like on a C7, I hit that. That's the 7th chord. That's fine. The whole idea is I'm thinking 3 notes. If I want to pull in notes from the 7th chord, no harm, no foul. But the idea is thinking 3 notes. That's going to be a lot easier. All right. So now I got, I could do the 7th chords. I could do triads. Now what else can I do? Bring in my chromatic scale. I'm going to tell you all a secret. You could play almost anything with that chromatic scale. Just keep playing. So much of improvisation is about just forward momentum. Okay, and then again, if we look at it logically, it's almost like those people that like they just want to like they just throw all this information at you and just keep talking to you until they browbeat you until you're like finally okay, fine. That's almost the point that we're going at here, which is like just keep playing chromatically and start on any note. I don't care what you start on. It's going to move so fast, you're not really going to be able to hear it, right? Take a listen to what that sounds like. And then you notice how every now and again I'm trying to hit a chord tone just to kind of bring it in there. Now, was that a great solo? No, it wasn't a great solo at all. Could it work in the moment? Yes, right? And at least it's like, whew, okay, I didn't fall flat on my face, wasn't a train wreck, I got something out the door, I'll work on it some more to improve, right? We're not even talking about left hand here, right? We can also bring in the left hand as well. So then you could find that you have certain sections in which, okay, hey, look, you know what? I can jam in that left hand and let the left hand do a little bit more work. Let's go back to that chromaticism again. All right, so yeah, my virtual keyboard just. All right, so now see how now I'm having that kind of that collaboration between the hands. Let the left hand do a little bit of work, let the right hand do some work. The last thing to remember, and it dovetails along with the first thing. These are probably the 2 most important things. Number 1, breathe and relax. And then the last point, space. When we start to improvise, we think we need to fill in all this space. All you need to do is just look cool, right? Sit there and just like, yeah, you know? So like.
I found this way.
right? So you see how I can put some space in there and let it breathe a little bit, and that gives me an opportunity to kind of think about where am I going and what do I want to play, all right? Again, it's the relaxing. The space allows me to relax a little bit, gives me some time for my brain to think, and then utilizing those other techniques will kind of get you going. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Could you throw chordals, intervallic stuff in there?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, chordals are great because since there's such an open sound, you can really kind of... And the other cool thing is you could utilize this chromaticism in chordals as well. Check that out. Right, so you can like play around with those chordals and really get some cool stuff going. And a lot of times, like what I'll do is, you can even do this kind of stuff, which would you're like kind of like playing the chordals up and then throughout that whole section, because you can look at this as like, okay, here I am F, right? Here I am G flat. Here I am G, right? So you could kind of think of like those different centers and then like, and that kind of stuff sounds cool because the tension that's created between what the band is playing and what you're playing, as long as you then resolve it, sounds neat. Right, so then I gotta resolve it at some point. It's obviously stuff you gotta practice, you gotta work out. But as long as you resolve it, all of that tension that you create with those chordals sounds really neat. I would also suggest to look at this kind of stuff as you see the key center there, right? So that's really all F major. So I wouldn't look at that as F major, G Dorian, C Mixolydian. It's really just F major scale, right? And if you really want to think, in terms of scalar, you really even just think 5-finger scale as well. So. Right, so what I'm thinking here is, I'm thinking right here you could be in like a G flat, right here, let me try and write that a little bit better. G flat major 5-finger scale, here's your F, the B flat to E flat, you could kind of think of that as A flat, right? A flat major, and then going back to the F, the G flat really starts right there, going into here. Here I could think of that as like an A major. So then I can really look at the song and break it up into 5-finger patterns. So then really I'm like A flat and then back to F and then G flat. Oops. Right? So then check that out when I'm thinking that. So F, A flat, F, G flat, A. Right, so now see how I'm staying in those 5-finger patterns? It makes it a lot easier for me to generate some ideas, and I'm not worrying about the cross, because the cross is where we also get ourselves into some trouble at times, because that kind of messes up our finger position. When we can stay in that 5-finger position, we're able to generate the ideas a little bit easier from a pianistic standpoint. Make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. This is all really helpful.
Ah, good.
I've needed this for a while. Thank you.
You got it. Offer. All right. So one of my blog posts, I've been working on trick number 3, the blues licks. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on it. Let's see here. I don't remember that blog post. 5 easy blues tricks. No. Let me shut this. I didn't write this one. Actually, Paul wrote this one. So we got. All right, something like that. All right, so anyway, let me go back to the question here. Is there a lesson on jazz edges that covers more? I could play the lick, but getting the right feel for the 16th note triplet is difficult to hit and miss. You say it works great in the blues form, but especially great if you start in measure 9. Okay, it's getting better. All right, so let's just really talk about that. So what he's talking about here is this article on My Jazz Edge. So if you go to My Jazz Edge, you see you can see the different articles here that we have. And this lick right in here, this 16th note triplet, that is really the key. It's like getting the feel, all right? So, right. One thing that I would suggest you do, and then actually, what did he do? I would start with this one. Okay? And just trying to like get to you're trying to like, what I think of is I think about trying to get to my thumb, and that's my landing point. And what I'm trying to do is, again, everything comes back to being loose, right? And staying loose. So always analyze your playing, videotape yourself if you can, all right? Record yourself on video because you can see, I don't understand why I'm so tense. Well, take a look, right? And even if you think, yeah, Willie, I know I'm not tense. Trust me, you might find that you're holding some tension, and that is always going to get in the way of you being able to. Getting that feel, that like kind of bluesy feel. So start. Just like kind of like playing around with that. And one that I like is this, that F major triad. You notice the C is doubled, works over the G minor. And notice also I can throw that G sharpener. Now one challenge you might find is I can reach that easily with my hands. Maybe you can or cannot, right? So if you find that like, oh man, I can't do that, don't fret. There's always. So a lot of times that triplet feel is like really about just working it until it feels natural to you. Go ahead, Offer.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. I typically actually also do the top note to the bottom note and get a sense that I really feel that it's a swinging triplet, and replicate that with the 16th note. So
yeah.
But sometimes it just gets stuck a little bit. Just but sometimes get it, sometimes don't. And
keep practicing it. You'll get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then the other question that was in there, and it's good to know that Paul wrote this, I can ask him about it. But what I find, I have a lick like this, and he actually tells me where to place it. I'm playing, I'm saying, well, now I'm practicing it within the context, so I play 8 bars of solo and then put it in. And then what I'm finding, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. And it seems to be, maybe has to do with just the choices I'm making on those first 8 bars. I don't know. Do you have any
Well, yeah.
thoughts about that?
So the word a day calendar is another great example. I remember one word I learned years ago was denizen. It's like an inhabitant of a certain area. I never use it in my vocabulary. But if I start talking and my language is just very relaxed and like, yeah, it's just hanging out with a bunch of guys, these cats, and, they're a denizen of Boston. And you'd be like, what did you just say? Because you see how like my relaxed vernacular, right? Then it didn't quite fit with the word that I just put in there. It was like my speech is here, and then this word is like over here, much more sophisticated, right? So that could be one part of it as well, right? If I'm like, playing. Right? See what I'm saying? Like, it might be that it's like it came out of nowhere and it didn't fit with what you were just playing. The other thing it could be is it's a very minute, like the feel. Like, I mean, we're talking split second. You come in a little bit ahead of time, right? It just doesn't feel right. It's like that placement of the lick is so critical. One of the reasons why I never really liked licks, because a lick, again, is like somebody telling you what to say. Now, I'm not saying don't play licks. I'm not saying that I haven't played licks. I'm not saying that I haven't learned licks or not recommending that you don't learn licks. But I always try to keep a very realistic viewpoint of what is the function of the lick for me. And I always think, for me personally, this is my personal feeling, is that the lick is a springboard for me to kind of take my ideas out and try and figure out, well, what do I like out of that? What part of this lick here is me? Maybe I like that. And I'm throwing in some grace notes in there as well. I can change it around. But the idea is that I'm not just thinking of the lick as like, okay, this is what I have to put in here. I'm going to copy and paste it and put it right in there. And I have to make it feel and sound like me. Because the problem is, anytime somebody tells you what to play or say or do, it's never going to actually come from the heart and soul, because it's not from you. So I always recommend look at licks as a stepping stone to unlocking your musical creativity, right? Rather than it being, this is my vocabulary that I'm going to use, right? So, and another way of looking at it, if we think about, like, it's always good to like kind of relate this back to actual speech, is that, yes, now the argument can be made, well, wait a second, Willie, you learned all the words that you're saying right now. True, I did. I learned all of these words. But the words that I end up using are really because those are the ones that I attached to over the years, right? So like the word vernacular, I do use that word in my speech, like those fancy words in our speech that we use. Those are the ones that we've attached to, not necessarily ones that like, I just practice this over and over and over and over again until finally I know the word vernacular and I'm going to use it in my everyday speech. That never felt natural to me. Whereas certain words, like, okay, I've used them over and over, they spoke to me, I had some relationship or attachment to that word. So think of that in the same way, bridge that gap, right, of the analogy, and think of that in the same way in the lick. You don't have to do the whole lick, you don't even have to do the lick at all, but you take the lick and you try and figure out, well, what out of this lick really speaks to me, and why, and what do I like the sound of? I practice that, and I try to make it as natural as I can for myself. Does that help, Offer?
Yeah, that means I'm with you. That means I use the image. Basically, this is just part of a style that I'm not very strong at. I can improvise with the blues, but I don't play this type of stuff, and I think it's a really useful tool.
Yeah.
That's what drew me into it and trying to work on it. So interested. I mean, is where would you? Is there any place on Jazz Edge that has that kind of particular?
Oh, there's a bunch of blues stuff.
I
There's
know there is, but some of them are not quite. I mean, you have one, for instance, that I really like that was helpful to me. Just you know, on your chord essentials, that you know, I like that kind of, you know, going down the scale and then coming back up. So that's the type of stuff I'd love to work on more. So where do I look for more of that stuff?
All right, so when you log into the Jazz Edge site, and for time's sake, I'm not going to do that right now, but if you go up to where it says courses, you could click on, there's a little link there, it says blues. I would start there, that would be good. The 15 blues licks, those are some more great licks right in there to take a look at. If you like this sound right here, take a look at the Gene Harris lessons, all right? Because Gene Harris, all of that sound, that's Gene Harris. That's who you're looking for. And Gene Harris is Gene. And what I would suggest is when you're doing a search on the Jazz Edge site, just literally type in Gene and press enter, because there's not much else that's going to come up for Gene. Right? So start there.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
You got it. All right, let's see. Mickey, and I apologize, I might not be able to answer everyone's question here today because I'm going to have to let you guys go soon, so I'll be quick though. Can you describe how you modify the sound of your keyboard using a mixer or equalizer? I use a Yamaha DGX, same as you, I believe. The sound is good, but yours is better. To be honest with you, I don't manipulate the sound using the mixer at all. It's typically straight in. So I mean, even the EQ, I don't mess with the EQ at all. I will tell you though, I'm going to start to do more of that tech stuff at the Total Musician. So I'm going to be talking about things like, you know, iReal Pro, GarageBand, Sibelius, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in more of that tech related stuff, that's what I'm going to be doing at the Total Musician. And that's another reason why I created the Total Musician, because then there I can add some of that stuff, whereas I just felt like on Jazz Edge, it's going to overwhelm people with too much stuff, right? So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, that's where that kind of stuff is going to live. And I will be taking, you know, requests from students of like what kind of tech stuff they would like to work on there. So, Barbara, I downloaded the video zip files for the 2-day ruleless chords, but I can't seem to find the resources even though I downloaded them. What could I be doing wrong? Just make sure that you are clicked on the download resources link. There should be a download video, download resources. Once you download the resources, it's a zip file. It should go to your downloads folder, and just make sure that it might be getting unzipped automatically. And then, you know, there's a folder there and you're not used to that. So maybe if you just type a search in your computer for rootless, that might come up as well. Neo, why are inverted chords more advanced in sound? That typically has to do with the intervallic relationship of the notes. Whereas like here you can see it's all thirds, 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 right? There, we have that second in there mixed with thirds. So anytime that we have chords that mix intervals or intervallic relationships, we will find that the chord, that will change the sound, right? And that's why triads are all very basic sounding, because they're all what we would call tertial, right? Or fourths in there, but it's always a lot of thirds, thirds, thirds. Whereas when we start to do stuff like this, or add in tensions, now we're starting to create some different intervals between the notes of the chord, which creates some beating in the overtones, which then to our ears sounds a little bit more advanced. Hey, Virgil, is there any way to get Paul a virtual keyboard set up? I find the visual keys lit up to be very useful. No, not for coaching. For coaching, he's going to be doing his setup. For his lessons, they have the virtual keyboard. If you want the virtual keyboard, then you should check out the Premier membership with me, because we will be doing all of that with the piano in our Premier coaching. But as far as coaching goes, his keyboard is, it is what it is. Mark, yeah, piano and voice audio is cutting out. This is a new mic. This is a wireless mic by Rode. I'm not sure. I'll have to check the I'll have to check the video recording, but the recording of today's office hours will live in the forum. All right, so you could check, and maybe there it might sound better. Paul, can you explain the 5/7 of 2 in Piano Essentials chord progression? That is actually better spent if I direct you to the lesson. And the lesson that you're looking for is the secondary dominance. All right. In fact, I think, let me just take a quick peek here. I'm curious if, let me see if I can find this real quick, because it might also be in the blog too, I think. So I'm just going to take a quick peek here. Got a lot of stuff open. Yeah, if you do a search for secondary dominance, basically, and there's a great there we go. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to send you a link to the article, all right? So this is it right here. Secondary dominance, what are they? All right? That's what you're looking for, okay? This is right in the blog, all right? So I just sent that to you. If you guys are not on the site, just go to myjazzedge.com. And you can get to the blog that way. But those are your secondary dominants. That's what you're looking for. That's where that 5/7 of 2, 5/7 of 3, 5/7 of 4, all of that stuff comes into play. All right, so I got 3 minutes for one last question. If anyone has another question, quickly. Otherwise, well, let's see if anyone had a question. Nope, I don't see anything on Facebook or YouTube. So any other questions? All righty.
I just have a comment on apropos Paul. He's recording the standard by the dozens in mirror mode.
Yeah, we're fixing that. Yep.
Yeah.
We're gonna fix that. Yep. That's should be all set moving forward. And I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna fix the older videos. All right. Yeah. Like his picture in picture, the right hand. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're like, wow, he has a really good left hand, doesn't he? All right, great. Okay. Okay, yeah. All right. So thank you all very much for joining me. Like I said, if you want to know when these office hours are, you want to get access to a bunch of free lessons, just go to myjazzedge.com. If you go to myjazzedge.com and sign up there, it's totally free. I'll show you what that looks like. So that's... Oh, you know what? There you go. So all you do is just go right down here where it says set up your free account. Put in your name and email address. There's over 225 free lessons on there. There's no cost for it. It gives you access to the blog, and then it will also give you access to the event list as well, so you could see when the office hours are. And I will also do free webinars and workshops from time to time. So it's a good place to just make sure that you're kind of up to speed with everything that we're doing. So anyway, thank you all very much, and I will see you all in the next office hours. All right, take care, everybody.